Peachtree City Planning Commission meeting to order. If everyone would please rise and do the anthem. Or pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'd like to go ahead and move it over to staff.
Do we have minutes to approve?
We do.
Didn't even bring them. Oh, okay. That's okay. We'll bring a copy for you to sign at the end of the meeting. But did you want to?
Do you have the agenda? Can we go ahead and get the agenda up, please? If we have it. Because unfortunately, I copied over a shortcut and not my agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, do we have any additions or deletions? I know we did have one change before, one deletion, and that's been taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Any others?
No, sir.
No? Any announcements and reports?
Just a happy new year.
Exactly. Okay. Item 4, approval of minutes. You all had an opportunity to review the minutes from the November 27th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Any additional comments from those minutes?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved to approve the minutes as presented. Okay. Item 5, public hearing. We do not have a public hearing for this evening. Old agenda items, anything?
Starting off fresh this year.
Okay, good. So we're going to go ahead to item 7, new agenda items. The first one is landscape plan, Peachtree City Orthodontics, 101 Gates Entry. Hand it over to staff.
Well, let me first start by saying that there was a slight change to the landscape plan shortly before, just a day or so ago, and in case anyone saw the landscape plan prior to that, it was very minor, just some things in the, had to do with the quantities. The quantity, the total overall quantity did not change, but some of the numbers changed between the plant material, the plant different species. So that was the minor change. So you might see it a little bit differently, but not even noticeable really. Okay, so moving on. All right, the site is located at the south end of the city, at the entrance to the Gates subdivision. It's zoned OI, or Office Institutional. Oh, whoa. How do I get,
You have to double click really quick.
really quick on the, there we go. In the yellow outline there. The zoning had conditions which limited the permitted uses and also affected the architectural concept, things like the business hours, the building setbacks and curb cuts and that type of thing, so that the development would be harmonious with the adjacent residential neighborhood. There we go. So the required landscape is based on the amount of impervious surface on the site, which is 20,142 square feet. And so the number of required trees is 3 caliper inches of canopy trees and 2 caliper inches of understory trees per 1,000 square feet of impervious surface. And based on those calculations, this lot is required to have 60 inches of overstory tree and 40 inches of understory trees. And the proposal is for just that, exactly 60 inches over and 40 inches of understories. And per our land development ordinance, an evergreen tree can be counted as an understory tree as long as it is a minimum of 15 gallons or 6 feet in height. And this plan does incorporate, I believe it's three evergreen trees as part of their understory requirement. And those are used to screen their mechanical equipment. It's back here somewhere. can't quite see it from here. From the back there. And let's see. And then these here is just a sampling of the variety of textures and colors that they've provided. This is the evergreen tree that they're using as their understory, part of their understory requirement. Really, that's about it. Staff is of the opinion that the landscape plan meets all the requirements of the ordinances and recommends approval.
Okay. Do we have representatives this evening?
Oh, we didn't get the big microphone or the big stand.
Oh,
With that happening. Here, I'll bring you mine.
It is the beginning of the new year, so
It is.
we'll get it together. Apologize for that.
That's okay. Jason Walls with Highland Land Planning. Everything she said is presented on this plan. The only thing I wanted to point out is at the top between the development and the highway, there's an existing 50-foot green space with berm and existing plants that have been there probably for 8 or so years since the development was built. Same on the bottom between this development and the pool house. And then I do believe there's another green space to the right. So all that was master planned in this. So this is literally surrounded by green space, 50-foot with planting and berms. So this is kind of in addition to that and complementing the building and the architecture and all that.
yes, this has a berm, and on top of the berm, there's plants. So, and then this here is the amenity area for the residential subdivision. So,
Yeah, the pool, the amenity area.
yeah. Also bermed up. So this is kind of in a hole, sort of. The berms
Absolutely.
create, yeah.
That's it. Just here to answer any questions or comments you guys have.
Okay, thank you. Going ahead and any questions, Commissioner Reeves?
I think I just have one. Maybe you can help me understand the ordinance. Okay. So when I read the write-up, it says per section 1108, the perimeter of all parking lots shall be landscaped with evergreen plant material that is a minimum of 24 inches in height.
Yep.
Okay. And then it goes on to talk about while they are evergreen, it talks about the type of evergreen, I guess, that they're intending to put back there. And then it goes on to say that this type of evergreen at maturity is reaches only 2 to 3 feet. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Meaning they won't be 2 to 3 feet when they're planted,
Okay.
but
At maturity,
they're already screened. They're already screened with this. What he was saying. There's a berm here,
Mm-hmm.
and there's already trees and stuff planted on top of
Okay.
it. So really can't see this parking from anywhere. There's already shrubs here, and they're sort of down in a hole, and really can't see the parking very well.
Very good. I
And
understand.
it's small, and
Okay, thank you.
we didn't think it was a problem. So.
Any other questions?
No other questions.
Commissioner Hamner?
Just one comment, I think the plan looks really good.
Commissioner Chris?
No questions, comments.
Okay. Did have a couple comments that came in from Mr. Leota. Unfortunately, he's not here this evening to join us. One of the things, and did actually discuss it with staff, that he brought up was location of light poles for lighting of the parking lot. We typically don't see that on plans for the landscaping, and that's one of the things that we kind of discussed. It probably is something that would be nice to have on there. Now, I know that may change because sometimes depending on the size, there's, as Robin said, there's a landscaping
A lighting
plan that's submitted.
And sometimes smaller sites like this don't have parking lot light poles, separate poles. But maybe that they can,
I don't recall there being any here. I think it's all building pack. Sorry. I think it's all building pack mounted lights on this side. The parking lot's small enough, plus the street light.
Okay, and that's one thing, like I said, probably going forward, add another item to the
Yes.
checklist to do, just to
Sure.
bring that up. And like you said, since it's a small parking area, It may not be required for anything like that, but as we get into certain areas where there's a concern about excess lighting or light spillage, things like that into residential areas that may be around that, there may be some things that we would like to see, even though, because we typically don't see the lighting plan, or is that correct?
Well, we would see the lighting plan at a separate step.
Okay.
If they were to do one.
If they were to do one.
But I also think it would be, again, this is just going forward,
Yeah.
good to see those so that if there were a tree planted underneath it that would then block the light, those are the kinds of things that we want to look at during the landscape plan review.
Sure. I think in this case, it's stated on the development plans, on the site plans, so it just didn't get carried over here from
Okay.
the landscape architect.
Okay, appreciate that. One of the other comments was in relation to the white gravel in the back of the building. I know one of the comments that Ray had was, is there an alternative for the white gravel, river rock or something a little different than that?
Or a gray slate, something
Or
not
gray
quite
slate or
as-
something instead of the white?
Yeah, the stone right now is under, there's the curved windows.
Are we
there's
talking
a-
about back here?
Yeah.
In the back area, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a awning, or there's a cover over it, so we can't get grass to grow there, so we had to
Right.
place rock. I think the white was just simply chosen to match the color of the exterior of the building. If I recall, it's mostly black and white, correct? Okay, so sure, yeah, we can absolutely change
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
It's-
I think that was just an item that makes it a little more aesthetically pleasing, even though the white would match it, looks a little nicer.
A little more earthy.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's an easy change. We
Yep.
can do that
Okay.
as a condition
Yeah.
if you so approve.
And one of the other items in both, I noticed it because I have them in front of my house, in the front of the building, the sky pencils. Is there any opportunity to do some foundation plantings of, carry the azaleas around to kind of fill in around those, since they're pretty much just vertical? I know in my landscaping, I have some gardenias and boxwoods and other things like that. Is there any thought about filling in a bit with some foundation plantings?
I can't read it at this moment, but I do think each one it has one or two shrubs on either side of it. So each sky pencil has one or two shrubs, low line on either side. The intent was really to have ivy growing up the building, but I think that we took that out and put these low line shrubs there to kind of, the windows go all the way to the ground.
Within 8 inches?
Right, so
So
the
if
idea
we
was
did
to-
anything, it would have to be pretty low growing.
So on the,
Correct, so we were trying to kind of gap those
Yeah.
low line windows.
on this side, there is a shrub on either side.
I think there's azaleas on
So
that
there's
side.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 8 shrubs. I can't tell what the symbol is from here, so I can't tell you which one it is.
It's either, but it's something on that list.
But on the
Okay.
front, there isn't any next to these guys.
Yeah, I think the only thing on the front are the sky pencils,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's a good point. There is a lot of, I think, we don't have the elevations here, but like you said, the glass goes all the way down. There's very small spaces of wall facing out the front and
Okay.
the street side.
I think if there's an opportunity to do something just as a
Mm-hmm.
foundation, that would be great. If
Absolutely,
it's gonna
that's-
cause problems with it growing up in front of the windows, then that's something we don't wanna do, of course.
Yeah, there are
Okay.
azaleas, encore azaleas.
I do think we have a note down there that says we're gonna have a pre-installation conference where we're gonna lay the plants out. And if we see an opportunity to move something around,
Okay.
like you're saying, like, hey, this looks like there's a gap there, that's the time that, I think we'll invite staff to come out and have
Okay.
that meeting with us. It might even say that in the note.
Okay, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
So once the plants are delivered, we'll do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay, that being said, do we have a motion?
I'll
Put
make a
forward.
motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the landscape plan, Peachtree City Orthodontics 101 Gates entry
With the condition of the rock replacement?
with the condition of the rock replacement cover.
And maybe a pre-installation site meeting with staff?
Yes,
Okay, that'd be
as
good.
stated.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the conditions as stated. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approved as submitted with the conditions. Next item, well, actually, before I go on to the next item, I apologize. I did not introduce and welcome our new council members. I apologize. They come in and introduce themselves to us, and I did not introduce them to everyone else. Like to introduce our new council members, Suzanne Brown. And, oh goodness, Laura Johnson. I apologize. For some reason, Stephanie popped in my head, and I knew that wasn't right. It is January, so
Yes.
thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and move on to the next item, the conceptual site plan and building elevations, West Georgia Dermatology.
Alrighty. This next parcel is 112 Wilshire Village Drive. This is down at the, also at the south end of town, but a little further north than the one we were just at the intersection of basically Highway 74 and Rockaway Road, just behind the new, recently developed convenience store, gas station, Dunkin' Donuts building. And it is zoned GC, General Commercial, and that C there stands for conditions. This was a property that was rezoned GC, and there are some zoning conditions that restrict the uses, but the medical use that is proposed is a permitted use. So the parcel is within 500 feet of the major thoroughfare, and also a community collector road. Rockaway is considered a community collector, and so an architectural review will be required, and we'll look at those building elevations tonight as well. We'll talk about the plan first. The setbacks are 40 feet in the front, with also a 20-foot front parking setback, 10-foot side setback, and a 20-foot rear setback. There's also a 25-foot landscape buffer requirement per the zoning conditions along this border with the Summerby property. Summerby is just below this, down here. And there's also a 50-foot landscape buffer requirement along the Rockaway Road, which is typical for this collector road. Now, the applicant is requesting to reduce the buffer from 50 feet to 30 feet, which is permissible per section 723 of our land development ordinance. And the commissioners can approve that if the developer agrees to install additional landscaping that amounts to at least 20% of the caliper inches that are required. So you have that before you tonight. The proposed building is 10,310 square feet with 50 parking spaces. Parking is required at a ratio of 1 per 250 square feet for office, which would be 41 spaces. So 50 feet meets that requirement, and it is less than 125% is the maximum amount permitted, and this is only 122%, so that is meeting the requirement. Another condition of the zoning is for the lot is to have interparcel connection between each parcel in the Wilshire Pavilion development. On this side of 74, of course, across the street is also called Wilshire Pavilion, where the Publix is. But anyway, so you can see that there's direct connection with the parcel adjacent to it, but with the two driveways, here and here. They're going to share this driveway, which is bisected by the property line that divides them. Then both parcels will have access here, and then we looked at this parcel several months ago. There'll be another driveway connection to Wilshire Village Drive at the far end of this parcel, and then which will give them access to all the other parcels along the north side of this road, or sorry, the east side of this road. And then there's a golf cart path that runs along next to Rockaway that also has a connection. There's a traffic signal this direction down, let's see, west, And there's a crossing, a golf cart crossing, that goes to a tunnel that goes to the other side of 74. So they'll have a connection to the golf cart path. So that meets that zoning requirement. All right, I think we're ready to go to architecture. Alrighty. These building materials will look familiar to you. Are very similar or the same as what was proposed for. This is the adjacent parcel at 110 Wilshire Village Drive. This is the gas station and convenience center building on the corner. Excuse me. So. Sorry. This is the proposed building. Shoot. Materials right here. Sorry. The chocolate brick, white stone, the Nichiha wood look, and this iron ore color. Wood cladding look. Excuse me. Okay. Let's see. And metal panel accents. So our ordinance calls for front facades to be 80% brick or stone, and side facades to be 50% stone or brick. The staff feels that this fiber cement product meets the intent of the land development requirements for durable, long-lasting materials similar to brick and stone. So we feel that that is equivalent, and therefore that the coverings on the front and side facades of this building meet that requirement. Let's see. Here's a couple more pictures of the proposed building. All sides have the brick and the wood. Let's see. So the Wilshire Pavilion, the zoning requirements for this Wilshire Pavilion district also have some design guidelines that establishes a color palette. The palette includes a field brick color of boral red, an accent brick color of boral chocolate, and an ephes color of vanilla. But it also has a clause that says materials may be used per the architect's discretion. So the light vanilla color has become the field color from the guidelines, and chocolate accents, so they sort of reverse the colors. So, again, same colors and materials were approved in nearby properties. And in keeping with the city's ordinance, the predominant colors are neutral or earth tone. So that meets that requirement from the city zoning ordinance. Excuse me. Anyway, staff is of the opinion that the proposed conceptual site plan and building elevations for 112 Wilshire Village Drive meet the city ordinances and standards, and recommend approval.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Is the applicant here, or representative of?
Jefferson Brown Architects. The owners are here, and we're here to answer any questions that you have. Just want to acknowledge them right there.
Thank you. Okay. Can start down to the right. Commissioner Chris, any questions, comments?
I just have a question for staff. You know, this property is sort of connected to the paths and pretty well connected by roads. You know, in what part in the process, if we were to make a recommendation to connect to the paths, would we actually do so? Would it be at this time when we're talking about the elevation, or would it really be in the conceptual site plan?
Which is also this time, because
Yeah.
we're looking at the conceptual site plan.
Yeah.
So they are connected
Okay.
to that interior Wilshire Village Drive, which
Yeah.
is the private. Did you want a more direct connection?
No, I don't think it's necessary here. I think in this particular proposal, I think it's well connected. I don't think we
Okay.
need to add more connections unless my fellow commissioners think we do. I like the idea of as many connections as we possibly can, but I think this is well connected. I was just curious as to where we
Yeah.
would bring that up.
And luckily, our ordinance actually requires a connection for all non-industrial projects.
Okay.
So this one now would be the perfect time, and hopefully staff would have caught it
Yeah.
before if it weren't there.
Sure. Yeah, no further questions.
Commissioner Hamner?
No questions. Overall, looks good.
Commissioner Reeves?
The only question I had is there a particular reason for the 30-foot buffer as opposed to the 50-foot buffer?
From our request for the 50-foot instead of 30-foot?
Yes.
There is. We have foundation constraints and issues because of the way that property grades off. If you look at the plan on the site plan, if you look at actually go back to the rendering, could you bring the rendering out? What we did is we laid out the building first. We looked at the owner's program and requirements for the space plan. That's how we determine the width of the building. So it's not arbitrary. It's actually a very functional, non-wasteful plan. So then once we had the footprint, then we tried to place it onto the site. If you look at the rendering on the bottom left, you'll see that the sidewalks and the curb are right on the front of the building. There's no softness, there's no green, there's no opportunity to landscape that at all. We'd like better, I think the buildings, everybody responds to the buildings when there's landscape around them. It's also safer. When you have people coming in and out of a building, you don't want someone to walk out and then they're right on a public way. So we're asking to push it back. We're also dealing with, did you get a chance to see the site?
Yes.
Did you see how quickly it drops off and how far it drops off? If us being able to get that 50-foot buffer allows us to actually build a better foundation and a little bit better landscaping out front. If not, we're just going to have a concrete wall coming straight up, and then what do you do with that?
Thank you. No
Any
further
other
questions.
comments? Okay. And my only comments is very good flow between the properties. Building material, building color, building design, very
Thank you.
complementary to each other, which is something we always look for.
Thank
Is does it complement, the surrounding properties? So very good job in doing that.
Thank you.
And I agree, yeah, if you're able to go ahead and do some landscaping in the front of the building to be able to give that transition area, it's definitely better than just having it drop directly onto, a sidewalk or the parking lot itself, so.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity that we get to ask for those things
Sure.
and get an opportunity to say why. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Just a clarification, this proposal does include the 30-foot buffer then? Or would we have to approve that separately?
If you approve the site plan as shown, then you are approving that reduction.
Got it.
And as well as the additional requirement for additional trees.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Mhm.
The way I understand the ordinance is that if we reduce it to 30 feet, there is a requirement for the developer to install additional landscaping, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're okay with that?
Agreed.
Okay.
And the property north where the gas station convenience store is,
Yes.
we made a similar request there to beautify the property and to make it more usable.
Very good. Thank you.
We have a motion. Anyone?
I move to approve conceptual site plan building elevations for West Georgia Dermatology, 112 Warshaw Village Drive, as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? No? Okay. All those in favor of approving the conceptual site plan and building elevations, West Georgia Dermatology, signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the conceptual site plan, Highway 54 West Development, 1941 West Highway 54. Turn that back over to staff.
Maybe this one will go better.
Use the right pipe this time. I hate that when it goes down the wrong. That's right.
Okay. Moving to another part of the city. Out east. All right, we have, okay, this property is located on West Highway 54 near Sumner Road. It is adjacent to the Smoke Rise Corners subdivision, zoned LUC 33, which is a limited use commercial district. At one time, that residential neighborhood, the Smoke Rise Corners, was part of this LUC, but they chose to rezone, and it's now a limited use residential district, LUR 19. And here is the conceptual site plan, which is for, the proposal is for a mixed-use development to contain office and retail space in 7 buildings that are mostly one-story, totaling 90,000 square feet. These back here are two office buildings that are proposed to be 2 stories, and these are all commercial buildings for retail, restaurant type uses. The overall lot is 10.9 acres. Office and commercial uses are permitted uses in this district. Most commercial uses are permitted except for gas stations, car washes, or auto maintenance facilities. So no automotive stuff is permitted here. There was another requirement of this zoning district that not more than 4.1 acres of the land area can be covered with office uses, and no more than 4.8 acres can be covered with commercial uses. The original developer, his intent was to subdivide the property, and that criteria would determine the lot sizes. Since this property is not going to be subdivided, the criteria has been applied as a percentage of building area. So 4.1 acres is equal to about 45%, and 4.8 converts to about 55%. So the proposal is for 40,000 square foot of office versus 50% of commercial, is how that plays out, to equal the 90,000 square feet total. So 45% of the total versus 55% of the total. And then there's approximately 1.9 acres of open space, and that balances out the overall property. Another zoning requirement is for 50-foot wide area that abuts Highway 54 down here, 50-foot wide buffer. That is for to be preserved for potential landing location of a multi-use path, bridge, or tunnel that would cross 54. And then note also, too, typically we have a 60-foot landscape buffer requirement along the major thoroughfares, but this LUC was approved with a 50-foot buffer. And even so, they're giving you closer to 60 anyway, giving you some extra buffer space there. The parking required is 327 spaces with the office and commercial mix. A maximum permitted would be 408 with a maximum of 125%. The applicant has 363 parking spaces on here, proposed on here, which is within that range, so it meets the requirement. let's see, the development, excuse me, is located along a major thoroughfare, and they will require an architectural review. The applicant is not requesting a review of elevations tonight, but they did bring us some very conceptual things to look at to give us an idea of a feel for what the property may look like. So we'll look at those in just a minute, and then we'll let them give us some ideas and some comments about that. But let me finish up first and let's see. Do I have? Oh, I did want to say, in closing, if they have any unique, a development like this, you're probably going to have some, unique branding and that type of thing. If they have any unique signage that they are desiring for the development that would be out of, the ordinary, and not like our typical, we fit in our sign program, our signage requirements are pretty strict. If they have any unique signage that they want for the development, that they should submit a master sign program with the building elevations for your review and approval at that time. So,
Yeah,
that
and
was
if
all.
I can just kind of clarify the sign ordinance, they could provide a sign program that can't exceed the sign ordinance. It just adds different kind of, or the basic tenets of the sign ordinance. It would just add some sign types that aren't normal in our ordinance. For example, a blade sign. When you go to the avenues, you've got a wall sign, but then as you're walking down the sidewalk, there's kind of a sign that stands out perpendicular. That's actually not in our ordinance, but if they create a sign program that establishes that they are allowed to have blade signs and what that sign could look like, then that can be reviewed and approved by you all.
Good, thank you. Okay.
And that's really it. Staff is of the opinion that the conceptual site plan meets the ordinances and recommends approval. And I will switch to the elevations real quick and let Jefferson come in and talk about them. And there are I'll show you, there are 2 pages, but so you can tell me when you'd like me to flip back and forth.
Well, and I guess, Mr. Brown, we don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about the elevations tonight, because we understand that you'll be coming back for an official elevation review.
Yes, absolutely.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's what I was just going to preface that, is we're not going to be discussing or making a decision on the elevations, but staff thought it'd be good to take a look since they were presented, so.
Depending on how the approvals go tonight, does have a big influence on the architecture. What we're holding, though, the character of the architecture would be kind of an industrial modern look. That would be that clean look you can see in the renderings. And what we would do is we'd like to soften that with wood materials. So even though they're brick, even in the textures and things we're looking for ways to activate this community. I don't know if you've been like to the Bus Barn or a Partner's Pizza, where they have that outdoor area where you can sit, have a meal, kids can run around, they can play. That's what we're trying to create here. Areas that would be activated. When you look back at the site plan, it looked like there was a lot of asphalt. Well, actually there's the circulation that's required, and inside that circulation, we'd like to activate those spaces with people. You can see that rendering where during the day you'd have a lot of places for activity. So this would be kind of that structural steel, painted, not blacks, but very biophilic in the sense of charcoals and the blacks and the darks that you see in nature. Same thing, walnuts and cedars and pines as far as the wood accents that. And then good glazing so that the outdoor, when you're indoor, outdoor, you kind of blur that transition. But as people drive by, they can see into those structures. So that was kind of the feel that we're going for, is what would attract people and want them to stay. The Bus Barn is incredibly successful, and it's kind of, it's not the same, but it would feel the same, in that it's just you want to be out there and be a part of that space. And that's what we're trying to create. And if we can kind of lay it out, you can see the green that we're creating, a roundabout that we propose, so that traffic can flow, people can flow, and keep everyone safe. We also went with this flat roofed architecture with higher parapets, because restaurants do come, the RTUs, condensing units and all of that. We'd love to hide them, get the sounds, get the maintenance, get that all away from the people that would actually enjoy the space. So it's just a quick overview. And you can see on the one rendering, you know, potentially, you can see at the back there that we have parking and we have square footage where we could have a two-story building. And it would be envisioned, the potential for that two-story building would actually be, I guess transparency, I'm thinking about, I would love to put one of my farms there, the aloe farm, put it on the lower level, connect that to the community, and then we'd expand our offices on the second level. So that's how that space could be used, so that we can engage more of the public and draw more of the public in and give them reasons, give them a market, give them restaurants, and I think even in the lighting renderings, you can see how activated that would look. It's be captivating when you drive by at night, look in there and see people, restaurants, and outdoor space. So it's not like, it is not another strip mall at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? I could go on. I'm trying to be as vague as I can.
I definitely appreciate that.
Okay.
Looking forward to having that discussion on the actual elevations.
It's
coming up,
awesome. You
so.
should see what we have. The four-sided elevations, the concepts, the materiality. It is very exciting.
Sounds good. Okay, want to go ahead and open it up to questions and comments on the conceptual site plan. Commissioner Hamner, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this property is really important because it's going to be one of the first things people see when coming into Peachtree City. So appreciate all the thought and effort that's already been put into it. Everything you presented makes sense in terms of, you know, wanting to create an environment where people want to meet and making it look natural and all that. And
Yeah, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I forgot about it. Even the way that we laid this out, we tried to honor, there's some oaks there, and they're very large oaks. So even the space plan and what we proposed here, we worked around those larger trees and trying to protect that canopy, and these buildings, that the way that they're laid out, are staying away from those canopies. So when you get to see that property, think about that, think about this, and this is why we came up with the orientation. Even the topography and the trees that were there, we worked around them.
it's great to hear. Yeah, overall, this looks really good.
Okay. Commissioner Reeves?
So I think you just touched on what my concern was the trees, you know, and making sure that we try to preserve as many of the existing trees as possible, you know, but I'm glad to hear that, and I can't wait to see the elevations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chris?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm a advocate for Peachtree City and the paths as much as possible, as you've probably learned over the years here I've been involved. So I see that there is a 50-foot preserve area there for connections to multi-use paths. Is a connection anticipated at the onset, or what's the current status of that the thinking of that, around that?
The owner definitely wants, and we want access.
Okay.
We want everyone to be able to come up and through there, stay off the highway.
Mm-hmm.
Even some older future plans and concepts, there was even discussions in the past about a bridge at this end of town as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd hope to be able to connect to that at some point when that happens, if it happens. So we definitely want to be connected by golf cart.
Yeah, I mean, but I know there is a path that crosses over Sumner Road, I believe. I'm just wondering why that currently isn't envisioned to connect here, because I think it does kind of go near the rear part of that property, right?
You can actually see there is a connection point in the subdivision behind
Uh-huh.
that does come up right around the retainage and comes.
Yeah.
It would connect back over here.
Okay, so there is, there is.
They're already coming across that back property.
Great.
And it terminates there, so we would develop and go that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a question for staff then. I mean, obviously they want the connection.
Mhm.
What's the process in order for them to obtain the connection?
As part of their civil site plans, they'll need to include the plan for connection,
Okay.
and we'll review it to make sure it meets all the cross slope, and that's city property. So but that's that physical connection of the existing to the proposed. What that looks like will be reviewed and approved during the civil site plan review.
Got it.
And
Okay.
our goal is to activate community, so if we want to activate the community, they have to get there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Great. Second item I wanted to discuss was golf cart parking. I see a lot of parking for cars here, but no designated golf cart parking. Is there a reason for that, or are you open to golf cart parking being added?
That's more of a Jason's question. We're open to that, but a lot of the requirements are making us go to full-size parking spaces anyway.
Mhm.
But that could be,
Where do we stand on that? Because people, when you put in a parking lot with a few golf cart spaces,
They
the
end
car
up
tends
filling
to
them
park
with,
there. So I've been told to take them off and just show them as full spaces or vice
well,
versa. But
so it's not in our ordinance. It was something that we had hoped to address
And the
in
UDO, that didn't work out.
But what I like the idea, and I think we can work with them identifying a nice area that's sort of, I call it rock star parking, that's up front, that won't be have the same kind of problems that we have, like where just the other night over at Braylon, and there's a 250 and a Ford 250 parked in a golf cart
Yeah,
parking
it
spot.
happens. It happens.
So, and luckily here, they are overparked, but not illegally overparked. And so we have the opportunity to identify where those, and if you want us, and I put that as a condition of approval, then we will
Yeah.
make that happen during
I
that
mean,
civil.
so we've got 5 different retail buildings here with quite a bit of space, 50,000 square feet of space. I mean, I from my perspective, I'd like to see 5 to 10 golf cart parking spaces per building. And that would be my proposal for a condition, but I'm open to discussion on that. Because I think they want to activate the community, I think, and it's going to highlight, think about driving past here on 54, and you see into the buildings, like Mr. Brown is saying, and then you see all the golf carts parked outside. That would be pretty cool.
And unfortunately, that was one of the things, again, that we were going to, as a community, kind of discuss as part of the UDO, and maybe that will be resurrected at some point in time, but that was one of the items that we hope to have, because it is
Yeah.
not in our ordinance as currently
But
written.
we do have the ability to add it as a condition, correct?
Right.
Correct.
What I would not want to see, or would strongly discourage you from doing, is eliminating parking in lieu of golf cart parking.
Mhm.
Because then you really will end up with somebody using those for their
Sure.
full-size vehicle.
And that makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
and I think as they stand right now, they're over their necessary or the required parking, so there may be an opportunity to look at some areas.
Keep in mind that once they start putting restaurants in, that requires more parking.
Right, so,
The tenant mix is going to change.
right, so we can, that's where I was thinking, like, I'm looking at some of these spaces that are kind of green. I know, like, at Partners, it's really neat when you drive up and there's that outdoor eating area, and then people are pulling up in their golf carts. It gives you that real, and so if you want us to identify, an additional golf cart parking at a rate of 1 per 10,000 square feet of footage, something like that. If you more, 5 per, whatever the number is, just so that we want to find the right balance between a bunch of impervious surface versus, having the golf carts out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd say 5 to 10 per building, but I'm open to what you guys think.
Yeah, depending on the square footage and the mix, that may be too much, going to 10, and maybe the offices don't need as much
Sure,
as
no,
what
I
you
would-
have for the retail.
I would just say for the retail. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's necessary for the offices.
Well, let's come back to that, because I have something I think
Okay.
may have an impact. So, one of the questions, I'm going to kick it over to staff for that. So I see there's a full-service entrance. So are we looking at new signals at that location?
no.
That's going to be a left turn coming out of that facility.
It's a left turn going in.
So full service coming out of there, we would be crossing
So
over.
if it would be a left out, they will have to get GDOT approval for that.
Yeah,
I know that the previous property owner had approval from GDOT. I don't know if that's,
I sent it to Stanford, and his exact response was, "You've already got a permit there."
oh, okay.
Okay.
So you've
That's
already,
Genevieve Court, I think.
It
was.
is.
So there's already a previous submittal of some sort there.
but it will not be signalized.
As of now, no. But
Um,
I mean,
You're
that,
right, that's
that
true.
is a concern on my standpoint, just knowing the speed through that area. I actually wish GDOT would lower the speed through that shopping area and not up to 55 as soon as you hit.
Funny thing that you should say that, because I think that was on either the first or maybe the last meeting in December. The police department it was on the consent agenda for council, and they got all of 54 the same speed up into this point. And so I think the maximum was 50, so I think this might be in the 50 area.
Yeah, as soon as you got past Publix, it basically goes up to 55 right through the new western or the eastern area that we're looking to build this. And it's definitely a concern of mine. And again, that's something with the city and GDOT. But I know there's been multiple instances, where there's been crashes, wrecks, even in front of Piedmont Physicians, where we have that R turn or J turn that's been put in because we don't want people making lefts. And now we're going to have a major shopping and retail and office, and having people make left turns across 2 lanes of major highway is a concern of mine. So I think that needs to be looked at, and not even from your standpoint, but I think the city really needs to take a look at that, even if we have
Well, it's,
GDOT
I was
approval.
gonna say, it's a GDOT road.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
we don't get to control.
Yeah, I think something needs to happen with that. I don't know how that works. If the city needs to go to GDOT and say, listen, we're putting this, if it gets approved, this is going in. My personal, it shouldn't be any more than 45 until we hit the end of Peachtree City through that section.
Well, and
But
you can post a sign all day.
I agree.
And how people drive. But more of the type of design and how, whether it's full access or
Yeah.
not is the GDOT decision.
And I think if we are unable to get the speed lowered through there, then I think, again, and I look at our new council members, whatever they can do from their standpoint also, is to have discussions with the local GDOT rep and see what can be done if there's anything going on with that.
And we can, the study that was done, the corridor study that was done, and I'm trying to remember if it was 2017 or 2018, did a whole study from 74 out towards our borders, and it included this, and it included this area's projected growth. And that's where the R cuts came from. And I think they assumed that this was because of that previous approval that was given, this was gonna
Yeah.
be, but that's something that could maybe be looked at. That's certainly,
I mean, if you
let's
look at.
update that
yeah,
study.
Yeah, because if you look at the developments that are going on and will be going on in Fayetteville, with things that are happening there, the growth in the Trilith area and the continued growth in that area, it's not just going to be people making a right turn out of there and heading over to McDuff or the other neighborhoods in Peachtree City. It's going to be people heading eastbound also. So that is a concern. So yeah, whatever we're able to do as a city, I think we need to address that. Second concern I have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, one of his responses from GDOT was that we do have to do a traffic study with an
Okay,
intersection
that's what I
control
was gonna-
evaluation, a nice study. So we're gonna have to do a traffic
Okay,
study for this.
perfect.
There you go.
That'll be good.
Cover all these different options, R
Yeah.
cut, no R cut. My opinion, the medians are a little narrow once you
Yep.
have the turn lanes for an R cut for anything larger.
There's not
than
much of a
R.
median there at all.
Correct,
At
so
all.
it doesn't work great on this narrow of a highway, so, but anyways, all that'll be addressed with GDOT.
And I hate putting more stoplights in because they never seem to rectify a problem. They only seem to make problems.
Right.
But in a situation like this, maybe that's what has to happen. I don't know. But like you said, the traffic study will decide that.
It
So
may say do this.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't say put a roundabout in, but we have to go through all the scenarios and discount a roundabout and discount this and that. So it's
I
simple as
wish
included.
folks knew how to really drive roundabouts. I learned the hard way driving in England, so, and I love them and wish we had more opportunities for them. Yes. And this actually, the second question I have in concern actually may be back to you. There are three, and Ray brought this up too, there are 3 parking areas that dead end. I have some concern with that, and I know Ray had some concern with that. I would like to see a reevaluation of those dead-end parking areas, because I've run into that just recently, yesterday, in another area where somebody was trying to find a parking space. They got all the way to the end of the parking lot. There is no parking spaces, and they had 4 cars backed up behind them. And what do? Now you put it in reverse and hope the 4 cars behind you back up because there are no parking spaces. Number one. Number two, from an emergency standpoint, now we have 3 dead ends if we have to get emergency equipment in those. And I know, Jefferson, you were saying, you know, there's a lot of mature trees, old trees in there, and that's why the buildings are placed in the way they are. I don't know if there's any opportunity to reevaluate where building 7 and building 5 are, or is there any way to take a look to eliminate all of the dead-end parking, or as much of the dead-end parking as possible? Whether that be a turnaround and eliminate a couple spaces. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think that needs to be evaluated for this, at least in my opinion, to be approved. I'm afraid and concerned about those 3 dead-end parking areas, especially with the number of people going in and out, even though there are going to be more offices, but no doubt people are going to be parking there and going over to the retail area if there's no parking in front of the retail.
Okay. I did hear that. Did you see that, like that little pocket parking wedge? That was working around the mature trees.
I know.
So that's what you get. So if that is a concern, then we just remove the trees and replace them.
And I hate that happening, but like I said, my view is that we really shouldn't have, especially in a major development such as this, we shouldn't have dead-end parking. Because like I said, I'm concerned we're going to run into problems, and hopefully it's not an emergency situation, but I'm fearing we're going to run into problems just normal, everyday, evening, especially weekend parking, with people just getting jammed in there, and then what do?
Yeah, I think you already mentioned this, but the dead-end parkings really only surround the office spaces. So we may be able to kind of simplify it a little bit with some of the wayfinding signs and not suggest people go past that 4-way intersection to park. Another way around it is, you know, we don't have enough room for a cul-de-sac, but to stripe off some spaces at each end to allow some 90-degree or
You could
3-point
do
turns,
like
I guess, to kind of turn around and get back.
I hate to call it a dead zone
Yeah.
sort of thing, but that's the way to do it.
Hammerhead.
And I know from emergency services, I mean, you know, I don't know what view they're going to have, you know, going forward with fire and police and things like that, of having, you know, those dead-end parking
I
lots
mean,
also.
they're gonna make sure that they have a way to get to the farthest part of the building that's farthest away, and that they can run line to it.
Yeah.
That may not require a full circulation, like maybe you're envisioning, but, yeah, I mean, if there's cars in the way, they're gonna get them out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, and from the standpoint of life safety on the buildings, there's called an open area formula. You have to run this open area formula to determine that it is accessible, and those building configurations do have the accessibility to the public way as required for life safety.
Okay. And it'd be great if, and you mentioned signage, it'd be great if signage would work, but I know, again, from firsthand experience that they don't pay attention to that, and we kind of touched on that. So I'd like to see an evaluation done of those dead-end areas to see what can be done to allow for some type of turnaround.
We could also restrict those parking lots to be, I don't want to say strictly for the office spaces, but gates or something like that, to where they are almost like specific for those 2 or 3 buildings.
Could we do some enhanced area at the end of those, so that somebody can, not do a full circle, but like a cul-de-sac, but have more area than just sort of that,
Roundabout.
Jut out.
And maybe restrict the parking at the end.
so that there's more area for somebody to get their car turned around.
Yes. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, this is conceptual, but things like that, things, if it's over a certain length, we have to do the Y or T turnarounds for the fire truck. So when we get into the design and talk to Fire Marshal Felnet, we'll get all that figured out, I think.
Well, and I guess it sounds like it's not just a fire marshal issue. Is the planning commission is saying that they're concerned about, or I'm hearing,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, the actual design just from a user's point of view. And so instead of waiting until we get to the fire marshal review, which is at civil, can we maybe brainstorm over the next 2 weeks and have some ideas on how we could either, whether it's reorienting of buildings or designing the ends of those so that they're more convenient, those kinds of ideas, instead of trying to shoot, I mean, I hate kind of shooting from the hip a little bit
Yeah,
here at this meeting.
Reordering buildings would be absolute last thing I'd want to see, of course, but I think if you could go back and get creative on those areas, restricting those parking lots, now you're taking away X amount of parking spaces. Is that going to limit people's usage from the other areas? Because I'm hoping this is very, very popular when it gets built and opened. I'd like to see you guys go back and take a look and see what can be done with those 3 parking lots, at least in my view, before I'm able to say yes or no on this.
And
Okay.
for me as well, I think hearing the fact that the applicant is going to be required to do a traffic study from GDOT, I think information like that is information that we could also use in the Planning Commission. So if there was some way for us to hear it again after we get the results of the traffic study, I think that would be additional information that would be useful for us as well.
And I guess maybe that's an opportunity to take a look at the golf cart parking also, that Commissioner Chris has concern, and I do too. So I'd like to see another view of this, as Robin said, maybe in a few weeks, if that's possible.
Okay.
We could do that?
The golf cart space, that actually saves space. Those are about half the size, lesser drive lanes. So that, once we add in, 30 or so of those, it's going to consolidate some space on here.
Yeah.
And allow us to maybe play around with something.
Okay.
I think I have a couple ideas in my head
Perfect.
already.
I think the suggestion from staff, though, which I tend to agree with, is that the golf cart parking doesn't supplant any of the parking that's here. I think that would be in addition to what's already there.
So that's a good question for me. Hold on, a golf cart space does not count towards our parking total?
No.
But I guess I'm wondering why not, because that would be beneficial.
It's
No, I
just
mean,
the
it's
way our ordinance is written.
Well, it's beneficial from a stormwater standpoint. It's beneficial
I am not
from a-
disagreeing with you, sir.
Agreed. But
But it's, we can look at some of those spaces where, and it may be in this case, since, if stormwater is an issue, they can be of impervious paver design.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of, I know, I can see your brain's thinking too, you're kind of got that far off.
It will fit well within the ponds. The ponds are built oversized, so I've kind of already done math on that.
Okay.
I don't see that being a problem at all. I wouldn't come from that standpoint. I just meant in lieu of a park, it's like when coming to golf carts.
I know. I mean, again, you are overparked. I mean, these are things to kind of go back to your client with too, because I know you
Yeah.
had envisioned a restaurant kind of heavy
And
place.
another ironic part to it is that traffic studies don't consider golf carts at all. So when we do these traffic studies, the IT manual, there's no accommodations for trips generated by golf carts, which we have, I wouldn't say 25%, but we have a lot percentage here in Peachtree City, so.
yeah.
And if you look at the location of this, I mean, you're probably going to have a lot of people coming out of Smoke Rise, on golf carts coming through there. The home's just in behind. You're going to have people coming. I'll be able to get over there from my house, easily now for things too. So
He'll be biking.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you have,
many-
you have a lot of, I expect a lot of golf carts actually going into this development, quite frankly. So
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with Commissioner Kriz. We need to take a real serious look at golf cart parking here.
Yeah.
I guess with that being said,
Yes, yeah, I think,
I think it's best to go ahead and table this to the next meeting,
okay.
if we could go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
Is that acceptable to go ahead and table it? Have you guys take a look at it and come back next meeting? Thank you. Probably so.
I have another question though.
okay.
What happens next? A development like this, what happens next? After it passes the planning commission, does it go in front of the city council?
No,
Or what
ma'am.
happens next?
We're going to be talking about the planning commission role in the development process at the end of the meeting tonight. So that's a great turnover to that. The next step on a normal project that gets approved, once it gets your approval for the conceptual site plan, they immediately go to, at their schedule, civil design. And they design all that stormwater and it gets into the weeds, so to speak, on foundations and all of that. And we go, the staff review, once they submit it, the staff reviews it, and that goes to the fire marshal, the engineering, the zoning, the building. It goes through all the different departments for review per our very detailed codes and ordinances. It does not come back to you all until the landscaping plan or if there's a building elevation.
Very good.
But it does have to come back for both if those are applicable.
Yes, it always comes back for landscaping and for elevation if applicable. Yes, sir.
And Robin, I guess one more question. The path that is coming off of Sumner.
It's already on that property behind.
Right,
you.
it comes through, so
Mhm.
that connects the neighborhood. And my question is, we're not going to have all these golf carts going through the neighborhood to get to this development, are
That's a
we?
good question.
Because I'd hate to do that.
Which neighbor? Oh, you mean the neighborhood right behind?
Correct.
No, sir, they're not.
Okay, that's
No.
what I'm saying, that path,
No, it's
it
on
runs
this
adjacent to
side.
it.
The connection is on this
Okay,
side, so it
right.
will not run through.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I remember seeing the path there. I couldn't remember if it cut through that corner of,
It's right,
Okay,
right
excellent.
behind them. Yes, good question.
If we see this again, and I'm sure we will, it would be great if we could see the golf cart
More
path.
clearly. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, in there as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. I move to table the conceptual site plan of Highway 54 West Development, 1941 West Highway 54 until the next planning commission meeting.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table until next meeting. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion is approved to table to next commission meeting. Okay. Thank you for the very detailed description and everything, and I know both of you will be able to get together and be able to come up with a solution. I'm sure of it, so. You already, figured. Thank you.
We are, with your permission, am I missing something?
What's next?
Just gonna one-on-one.
The next item on the agenda?
Were we gonna wait for Ray for that, though?
Yeah, there was a question if we should
Oh,
wait
okay.
for Ray to be part of that.
Okay.
I mean, are we able, I hate to say, are we able to move it again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is,
I hate
an
moving it
agenda.
again, but.
No, it's a good point. It's a
Yeah.
good point. I'm
Yeah.
so excited to talk about it
I
tonight, too.
know.
No,
I think we put it off now 4?
Yes, this
At
is
least,
4.
so I hate to do that, but it may benefit us as a
Okay.
group to be able to have Ray here also.
Okay. Would you, okay, I understand. I'm just thinking, would you want me to split it? Because it kind of is 2 presentations in one?
That might be a good idea. Yeah,
Because the first one is basically the land development process, and then the other one is planning commission, what you do, ethics, all that kind of stuff.
let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
if we could
And
do
Ray is, he comes from a development background,
Right.
and so this is a very familiar process to him.
Yep.
I feel comfortable
Okay.
saying that since he's helping staff catch things. I appreciate that.
No, I think that would be great if we could do that.
So I would, and that actually helps, I think, because it's a long presentation and it's a lot of me talking, which is not my favorite thing to do. So breaking it up is perfect.
Okay.
That's works for you all. Very
Okay.
good. So in Peachtree City, our land development is very similar everywhere, but there are certain quirks that are unique to Peachtree City, and so I wanted to go over the process, what it is normally, and how you all fit into it at a kind of at a high level tonight. The first one is, maybe I'm a librarian at heart, but I like to organize and categorize things. And it's helpful to think of the phases of land development. And from scratch, you start at the top here at zoning all the way down to your building. But there are some properties that you kind of jump in the middle because you've already done phase 2 and 3 30 or 40 years ago, let's say when the city was created, and now you're ready to jump kind of in the middle. And so what a lot of what you all see is actually kind of in the middle of this property. But it's always good to step back and sort of look at the big picture. And the first thing is zoning or entitlements. You know, our Constitution protects and allows private property ownership, and therefore zoning has to be, it's strictly regulated, and it has to be the least amount possible to achieve your goal. And so our zoning ordinance establishes land uses, what you can do with a property, what, you know, versus commercial versus office versus residential, and sometimes in between. It sets a density level, and it does that by controlling what we kind of call those physical attributes of the regulation. So minimum lot size, minimum lot width, how far physically you have to have your building from your property line. Those kinds of things as a set of rules essentially create density limits, which is the purpose of zoning. It actually comes from health and sanitation so that you don't have too many people crowding into land, creating unhealthy. And that's why you'll hear us say a lot of times the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. Those are the 3 reasons that we are allowed by the Constitution to have zoning. So then, once you've got your entitlements, you know what you can do with your property. If you want to basically sell off different parts of it, then you have to go through a subdivision process, and that sets up, you divide the property and you decide who owns what. In public roads, for example, or roads, majority of the time have to be built to a certain way, and then they are physically subdivided out and given to the public, your local government, to maintain and own. And so when you hear us say plat versus plan, platting is the actual subdividing of property. And then once you've done that, what you may end up going into is buying a piece of land that's already been through the zoning and subdivision, and you're ready to, like these fellows here, build an orthodontist appointment. Then, when you're ready to build your project on your property, that's called development. I call that the moving dirt part. This is what are the physical constraints of the land? You apply your environmental protections. What's wetlands? What's floodplains? How far are you away from a creek? How slopey is it? Those kinds of protections. And then also your infrastructure standards. How deep is that road bed? What's the ADA grade? Those kinds of things. Those are all included in that land development ordinance. And then once all of your dirt has been moved, your sewers have been put in, your water lines have been put in, then you get to the actual physical of the building, the foundation, and going vertical. We call it the sticks part of the construction. And that's where your building inspections and whatnot kind of come into play. And they apply minimum building standards. The state of Georgia has a set of minimum, they say if you're going to have building inspections, then you have to at least meet these minimum standards. Many jurisdictions adopt additional standards on top of those, like we have here in Peachtree City. Any building over 5,000 square feet has to be sprinkled. That's not a state requirement, that's a Peachtree City requirement in addition to those minimum standards. So how does the Planning Commission fit into this? So on each one of these, we'll go through sort of a high overview of what the normal process looks like, and then you'll see that yellow star that says PC, that's where you all get involved. So we typically we hopefully have a pre-application meeting with an applicant. Not always, it's not required, but we'd like to get the heads up when something's coming our way. And then we have to meet minimum application and advertising requirements in the state of Georgia. And then they held a public hearing. Now, the state of Georgia only requires one public hearing through the zoning procedures law, but the city, again, has adopted higher standards and now has 2 public hearings, the first of which is you all host that meeting. And many times people have, and I've heard it from all sides, they have the perception that once it gets to the public hearing, the decisions have already been made and it's just for show. A healthy process, and one that we like to foster here in Peachtree City, is the decisions have not been made. In fact, you're hoping to get information at that public hearing that you maybe just, the questions that you had, just like tonight, the additional questions that you had that aren't necessarily, let's say, staff didn't think of them, or they're not those 6 criteria that we have to review, but your perspective, you have a unique perspective, and so you had come up with these questions. We want to have those questions and discussion at a public hearing. It is okay to learn something new and for a plan to actually evolve as a result of the public hearing. Otherwise, it's just a show, and then that's not the kind of situation that we want here in Peachtree City. And then a good distinction here is you all recommend actions to the city council, but you don't actually make decisions at a zoning level. That is a legislative decision, and only the elected officials can make that. And so one thing that I get hounded a lot from my bosses is make sure they say we recommend to approve or deny something, so that folks, any opportunity we have to help the public understand that you guys are a recommending body and not actually making the decision. And then once the entitlement process is done, you guys aren't done yet. They will come back at the platting. This is the subdividing process. There's a conceptual plat in many ways, like what we saw tonight, a conceptual plan. You all are the platting authority, or one of you and the director of planning are a platting authority. Granted, that power is granted to you in the city's ordinance. So once you all approve a plat, it doesn't have to go to the city council. And so a conceptual plat is brought to you. We haven't seen one of these. We don't see too many of these, but back in the 80s and 90s, by gosh, and even early 2000s, that it was heyday here, and that was a very regular review that the Planning Commission had. But I think, what was the last one we had? Was it Mill Farms? I think.
Might have been.
Yeah.
No.
So that will come to you guys, and then you assign a representative so that when it goes through the review of staff after your approval goes through the technical review of staff, there's also a representative on there who has to sign off on it to make sure that your wishes are being carried through. Then it goes to construction plans, which is just another name for development plans. That's where the roads and sewers get designed, and then it goes to the final plat process. You cannot sell, legally in the state of Georgia or in the United States, you cannot sell property that hasn't been final platted yet. Now, is a very similar process. You start with a conceptual site plan. You all see those on a regular basis. We assign a representative who follows it through so that technical review at that final site plan, and the LDP stands for Land Disturbance Permit, so that before we issue that LDP, the representative has signed off on that review. Then, once that LDP has been issued and they start moving all that dirt, they will come back. Now, they couldn't actually do them at the same time, but process-wise, it's easier to think of it as when they're ready to design their building, they bring their elevation back to you all. Again, you all are the deciding body on that. It doesn't go to the city council afterwards, although an appeal does go to city council. So if they don't like your decision, that's their next step, is the appeal through the city council. And then what's a little bit unique in Peachtree City is we do the landscape plan as a separate step. Most jurisdictions, and that's why when you work with developers or engineering firms who are not do regular business at Peachtree City, let's say like a McDonald's or Chick-fil-A that have sort of their access, their big companies that just do this everywhere, they usually submit the landscape plan with their development plans. Well, that's not how it works in Peachtree City. That sheet has to be pulled out, and it's a separate review process, because technically they're not supposed to do the landscape plan until that building is under construction and they know for sure where it's going to physically be, 2 feet this way or 2 feet that way. The idea is to help you get a better result out of your landscape plan.
But you can combine conceptual site plan and elevation, which we saw today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or yes, and we see that a lot. Or sometimes, like in the industrial sites, they'll pull it apart because they're doing a spec building and they haven't identified a final product person to buy it yet. But once they do, then they come for an elevation review. And then the last step is the vertical step. Our building department does architectural plan reviews, and once they've passed all of that, they issue those permits. They do building inspections, and before a CO or a certificate of occupancy is issued, we do landscape inspections to make sure that the landscape got installed per ordinance or per plan, or in residential per ordinance, and then a certificate of occupancy is issued. And usually that's where we stop until they come back and start the process over again. And they get redeveloped. And so that is really the land development phases. This is a PowerPoint that is on the Planning Commission website and available to everybody. If you have any questions, happy to take them.
Appreciate it, Robin. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
That's
With that, do we have an idea? Are we going to be on for 2 weeks for our next meeting?
No, there's no meeting on January 22nd. Not enough items for the agenda.
They didn't come back and boom. They didn't.
We never got the concept plat.
Oh.
Speaking of platting,
Okay.
we do have a
Village. We're
yeah,
still working with
the
them.
extension of Towson
Okay.
Village, no. But they're working on it.
That's actually good, because that'll give us more time to work
So
with them.
February 12th, I believe
February
it is.
12th?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll bring chocolate.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Motion to adjourn in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.